Alright, so I've got some juicy hot takes and bad reviews for you guys today, so let's get into it. Husky Rescue says, better than Elden Ring, but much worse than DS2. No. Carly Potter says, I'm bad at this game, but instead of taking accountability and improving my skills, I will blame the game instead. Understandable, have a nice day. Ichi Joe says, please understand small indie company can't fix their broken ass multiplayer. Also, it's worse than DS2, which also sucks because at least DS2 is interesting to play. This was posted in 2022. At this time, the multiplayer was indeed broken. However, you say this like the multiplayer is the only part of the experience when it isn't. The single player is. Also, hell no. DS2 is just bad compared to DS1 and DS3. It is the worst in the series of games, and also, if we're speaking of interest, all of them are interesting. Glenn Z says, I've been trying so hard to actually enjoy this game, and the first DS for what matters. On paper, these games I should love. I really like the art style, the theme, the quirkiness, the inventive boss design, the many ways the game can be played, the many weapons, etc. I like the slow pace, being rewarded for being clever and thinking outside the box. I love the exploration, the level design. I should love this game, but I just can't. I played twice a few years ago for about 8 hours, and again now. Because of the hype around Elden Ring, I wanted to give this franchise a second shot. I've also played a bit more hours of DS1, which I preferred overall. Now I've been stuck again hours at end with the first boss, Udex Gundyr. I can almost kill him, but just by luck most of the times. I tried not fighting him to understand his attack patterns. I played defensive, waiting for my window of opportunity and then striking him. The second phase is what I find unfair. The boss assumes a shape so odd and so big it's really hard to tell what's going on screen to begin with. There's no way to understand his patterns because I just can't see a bit of what's going on. Overall, after hours of trying to fight the same boss, I see no progress at all. It is just too frustrating. I give up. If it's too frustrating, then I understand that. But what I don't understand is why you didn't just try with a different class that was stronger. The warrior class is the strongest one with base stats being highest in health and strength. As you can see here, I absolutely annihilated him with that, which while we're on the subject, another thing I'd like to point out is that you said you tried to understand his patterns. But if you're still getting trounced, then yes, you're doing something wrong. Which this isn't to discourage, but rather point out that I think you gave up too easily still. Especially since you definitely can see what's going on screen and where your character is as shown in this gameplay, or else you wouldn't be able to fight him, obviously. So while I understand the frustration, I'm disappointed in you. You're a gamer. Learn to adapt. You had plenty of time to try any other strategy and you decided not to. That's on you. B says, horrible game mechanics, very clanky. This is a console game ported to PC and they didn't even make the effort to adapt it to the keyboard. Everywhere in the interface it shows the controller buttons such as A, B, X, or Y, meaning you have to constantly go and check the settings to map whatever one button means on the keyboard. No, they aren't. You mean controls, and the controls aren't even janky or clanky. The problem is that they didn't give you a straight port for the keyboard and mouse controls. Well, even though you didn't say it right, at least you did have some genuine criticism. Game Nova says, terrible port, stutters a lot. Not a problem with my computer as other games run great at high settings. No, the port is fine, at least it is now. You posted this on March 9th, 2025, much later when all the problems have basically been fixed. If it's stuttering, learn to fix it because it is in fact your computer. Oh, and also just because other games run great doesn't mean all of them will. Didn't even specify if you play on Windows 10 or Windows 11, so how would anyone be able to help? Sherry says, it is easily the weakest of all Souls games. It stinks. Playable, but bottom of the barrel trash compared to the other games like Dark Souls 2. You with 5.5 hours, easily the weakest take of all. It stinks, bearable, but bottom of the barrel trash compared to thought out wits. Alright, jokes aside, this is a terrible take when you compare it to Dark Souls 2, which is objectively worse. Like, I could see it if you did compare it to Dark Souls 1, but Dark Souls 2? Seriously? But anyway, look at these charts. It's pretty clear the one that's better is Dark Souls 3. Farzivil says, it's not fun. I played Elden Ring and enjoyed it. Yes, it was tough, but I could still progress without getting fucked by enemies. The bosses in Elden Ring were tough, not the enemies you find along the way. However, this game does just the opposite. I get fucked by the enemies, but the bosses are easy. I don't want to play this game anymore, but I spent $30 and a broken controller over this game. I swear to God, if anyone says it's a skill issue, I will rip you apart like Homelander. Bro, you only have 7.7 hours. This is legitimately a skill issue. Especially if you played Elden Ring, this should be easy. Because I came back to this game from Elden Ring and I can say it was way easier. Sham says, use this dagger, constantly forced to W key on the enemies while changing the camera angle so I can hit them because the dagger attack hitbox is so small. Randomly, always landing hits in the middle of a combo because I'm repositioning while attacking due to the range of the daggers being nuts a butt. FromSoft didn't consider the mechanics of daggers when adding kick controls. Tries to repeat kicking dozens of times reliably, can't. Always at complete random whether it goes off or not. I would rather play without it than randomly always kick due to weapon off in design, making it almost unavoidable. It's not in the key bindings, bad game design detected. Tries to switch to mouse and keyboard to maybe rebind some things so it's not as big of an issue. Can't even change controls from the main menu or in game without them automatically changing back. Looks for the save changes thing most games have when this issue happens. It doesn't exist. It's all of a sudden won't let me even press escape to exit the menu anymore. Game only works with the controller, and I'm forced to mod out a mechanic that is inconsistent at best to ever land. Should have just used straight sword and never encountered the problem. TLDR, you will respond with get good instead of acknowledging obvious flaws with the game. So it's not random when you kick an enemy. Your character kicks them when they are close to you, which is dependent on the enemy, but also if you just stop holding W when attacking because that prompts it. When you attack, you'll move forward in the direction you're locked onto. There's no need to press W key into enemies, unless you weren't using lock-on, which I don't see why you wouldn't be, but this review says you're playing on keyboard, so I feel for you. But listen, the game isn't impossible on keyboard, it's just made to be played with a controller. Also, using the straight sword wouldn't have stopped you from kicking because you were moving while attacking. It still would have kicked. TLDR, yes, you need to get good. Also, look at this comment. TLDR, ram your head into a brick wall and blame the game for not trying to adapt and overcome obstacles, which isn't entirely wrong. Baksham says, let me preface this. I am a huge fan of Dark Souls and Bloodborne. I've sunk well over 1,000 hours into each. I have played the second DS and didn't like it. Big surprise. I was looking forward to this one with optimism and was hugely disappointed. Alright, so they're prefacing this with their hours and saying they have multiple NG plus 99 characters, but I honestly doubt it. Considering at this time of review it's only 78.6 hours, which by the way, it takes 31.5 hours to complete, so they only have 2 characters. And the fact they have nearly 200 hours is a massive red flag for their review, because it means they definitely had to enjoy this experience somehow. And this means that a lot of what they are about to say is going to come straight out of their ass. And yes, saying the game is unbalanced is one of them. Poise is non-existent and worthless. Poise was a major factor in combat in DS1 and allowed you to take hits without being staggered. If you had a high enough poise value, this allowed you to effectively trade blows with mobs and players. You could initiate an attack and not be staggered in the animation. Hyper armor is present in DS3, but it's situational at best. This leads to stun lock gameplay, the only viable strategy for PvE is to equip all light armor and a weapon with a good range and wide sweeping attacks to stagger every enemy in the vicinity or stun lock all of them, i.e. in the Boreal Valley, I used all light armor and Wolf Knight Greatsword to stagger every enemy encounter before they staggered me and I got through the area unscathed. However, if I try to use heavier armor and trade blows, I lose every time, so why bother using heavy armor at all? Poise is not non-existent or worthless. This information probably wasn't out at the time for your review, but look here at the Dark Souls 3 wiki and be amazed. You already know what Poise is, so what I want to focus on is the second point here. There is a hidden value called Poise Health, which ranges from 100 to 0 and determines how long your hyper armor frames last before being interrupted. The visible Poise stat serves as a defense for this Poise Health by reducing the amount of Poise damage inflicted by enemy's attacks. Essentially, a higher Poise stat helps you maintain armor frames longer. So anyone saying any armor above light armor is useless is stupid. That means you. If you're bitching complaining about it, here's an idea. Upgrade your fucking vitality and wear some proper armor. Shields have been very useful offensive and defensive item in previous Souls games. The ability to throw up a shield and block an attack was invaluable. Enemies' blows could bounce off your shield and stagger your opponent, creating an opening for you. Depending on the shield, taking a blow would not consume much stamina. However, in DS3, I was only able to take 2 or 3 hits before my guard was broken on most normal shields. The offensive side to shields in the previous Souls games, in the parry riposte mechanic, which also suffers in this game, I mastered parrying in DS1, and as a result, I could combat most enemies no problem. However, in this game, the parrying is almost entirely luck-based. Enemies swing so quickly, parrying is very difficult to perform, especially when enemies have multi-hit combos combined with the lack of poise and the stamina consumed in blocking. Screwing off a parry can almost cost you a fight. Great shields are useless. They too consume a great amount of stamina when blocking attacks and leading to frequent guard breaks. Shields are actually still very defensive, and I use one all the time. I agree that guards break fast, but this isn't Dark Souls 1, my guy. It's Dark Souls 3. Same with the parry mechanic, as it was changed to fit the faster pace and difficulty of the game. It makes perfect sense that you get fucked over for fucking up a parry because it does more damage than a normal stance break. It's not luck-based, you just aren't timing it properly because you're too used to Dark Souls 1. You're blaming the game for your failure to adapt. That's your fault. The lack of poise you speak of has nothing to do with parries, by the way, and neither does your stamina. So they aren't combined. And yeah, the one true part here is great shields suck. Enemy aggression. This is more of a personal opinion, but I still feel it holds weight. Enemies are much more aggressive than they ever have been in a Souls game. Many enemies have multi-hit combos that result in the player being stun locked due to a lack of poise. Blocking does not help because your guard breaks easily. Rolling is the only efficient method to combat. Armor and shields are way too underpowered to deal with the aggressive enemies of DS PS3. I mean, this entire review is an opinion and a massive hot take at that. Shields do in fact help with the multi-hit combos you mentioned because it stops them if they hit a shield with too high of a defense set. So here's an idea. Equip a stronger shield. Better yet, upgrade your fucking shield. The fact you missed this incredibly simple thing is just ridiculous to me. Have you ever been to the blacksmith before? Do you ever upgrade your weaponry at all? Light rolling and heavy weapons aren't the only strat because stagger is also based on damage, i.e. if you even upgraded a fucking straight sword, you'd be killing things. I know this because I've done it. Also, heavy armor is dog shit in all the games because it stops your roll. Everyone knows this except you, apparently. Despite the hours you say you put in, it sounds like you haven't played the game at all. Ryan No says, one of the worst games I have played. Over 100 hours and I can't understand why the game's so glazed by its community. Straight ass. One of the best games I ever played personally. It's pretty simple to understand why people like it. And if you can't after 100 hours, there's no saving you, my friend. That's the last of the reviews for now until part 2 next week. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and comment below and subscribe if you want to follow my content. See you in the next one.